So each summer, our oldest son comes home with a new TV series that he's discovered. It's always an adventure to see what he brings, and this summer he exposed us to a new series called The Expanse. The Expanse is a science fiction thriller about human beings who have polluted the earth, and global warming has happened, and the earth can't sustain the population, and so they've begun to populate other parts of the galaxy. They've populated the asteroid belt, and those folks are called belters. They also populate Mars, and those folks are called Mars dwellers. And there are several themes that keep showing up in episode after episode, and some seem obvious. The first is lack of oxygen, and how valuable a commodity oxygen is. Also water. Lots of time spent carrying ice from one part of the galaxy to the other so it can be melted and turned into water. But the one that you might not think about is gravity. How gravity affects you, what gravity does to you. It reminds me of the time when I taught middle school and taught students that we are exposed, our body's exposed all the time to incredible forces, not only the force of gravity pulling us down, but the force of the atmosphere itself. You have huge pressures pushing on every part of your body from above all the time. All that oxygen above us, all the way in the atmosphere, is pushing down on top of us because gravity is pulling it down. And your body has to fight against those pressures. The only time we feel the pressure of air is if we're in a violent windstorm, or if you're on a nice spring or fall day and you roll down the window and you stick your hand out the window, you can feel the pressure of the air as you try to go through it. But we talk about the fact that if your body, which is always pushing outward against the pressure that's pushing down on you, if you were to go in the vacuum of space and lose the pressure in your spacesuit, you would literally explode out. Because the vacuum of space has nothing pushing against you, and your body doesn't know that. Your body is still pushing out. And so without anything there, you would literally explode. And in this series, it deals with the whole struggle of people who are Mars dwellers or people who are asteroid belt folks who get exposed to Earth gravity. Their bodies are deformed because they weren't formed and born and lived in gravity. And there was one particular gruesome episode where someone from the United Nations was trying to torture some information out of someone, and the way they did it was to expose a belter to the full forces of Earth gravity instead of letting them float in a tank of water, which would be more comfortable for them. Force. This force on your body all the time. And I was trying to figure out how to explain what Jesus is talking about when he talks about a yoke, because most of us are not agricultural. Most of us have never seen a pair of oxen yoked with a wooden yoke. So what is it about? Well, the yoke is about how to deal with force, how to spread force out. A yoke keeps the force from being on one particular animal and it spreads it over two. The yoke spreads the force and the power of what you have to pull over your whole body, not just in one portion. And Jesus says, take my yoke. Well, he implies that we already have a yoke. And we do. We have all sorts of things that we carry that we don't need to carry. Last Friday, I was at the First Friday concert, and I was just watching the little kids running around while the music was going on in the courtyard. And there was one cute little 2 to 3 year old little boy, and he was completely oblivious to what anybody thought about what he was doing or how he was running. And he was so funny because it was almost like he had to rev himself up. He was getting so excited, and when he was getting ready to run, he'd just start going like this, and he'd do that for about 5 seconds before he took off. And so just for an hour, I'm watching this little kid. He'd run, and then he'd stop, and then he'd start up again, and then he'd run another direction. And he was just full of joy and delight, and he had absolutely no preconceptions, no filters, nothing that anyone had put on him that looked silly, or that was inappropriate, or that was just crazy. He was just delighting in life. But sometime beyond that age, we begin to put on things, take on things. Our culture begins to tell us that certain things are good and certain things aren't. And to an extent, that's appropriate. We need to live in a civilized culture. But when our culture begins to tell us that there's something wrong with us because of the way our body is shaped, or because how much we weigh or don't weigh, or what the color of our skin is, or what origin, nationality we come from, and whether we're an immigrant or not, or whether our parents are what a typical family should look like or not, or whether we're smart or not, and we could go on and on and on. And then we carry the burdens of the things that we've done where we've messed up. We call that sin, where we've done things that we shouldn't have done, and instead of asking God for forgiveness, we just carry those memories and that guilt around. And then we carry all sorts of burdens about the past and the future, the things that we wish had been different. And we replay those memories over and over and over again, and we can't seem to get rid of them. Or the worries about the future. Worries about what will happen to me. Those worries particularly come when we're stressed financially, when we're stressed because of sickness and illness, when we're stressed because we're worried about our children or our spouse or our parents. And we play these things out in our head. What's it going to be like next week? What's it going to be like next month? What's it going to be like next year? And we just burden ourselves with all of these thoughts. It's kind of like when a person gets a diagnosis of cancer, or even they have the doctor saying, I want to do a biopsy. And the minute we hear those words, we go to the internet and we look, biopsy, and then we begin to look at all the horrific things that can come. And we just take that on ourselves and we worry and we make ourselves completely anxious. And all those things just push down and overwhelm us. And Jesus says, take that yoke off. Put it down. Take my yoke upon you. Jesus points out to us that there isn't a life that doesn't have pressures. We know from our own biology the pressures of the atmosphere and gravity help us become strong. So pressure is not a bad thing. But the wrong kind of pressure is, and the pressures we put on ourselves lead to death and destruction. And Jesus says, put on my yoke. And the first thing we have to remember about a yoke is not a one-person thing. A yoke is a two-person thing or a two-animal thing. So Jesus is saying, put your neck through that yoke. Put it over your shoulders. Well, who's the other person on the yoke? Jesus. Jesus is there taking burdens from us. Jesus is there walking the direction with us. And Jesus is there to remind us that it's not about remembering yesterday or worrying about tomorrow or carrying all those guilts or burdens. Jesus says, ask for forgiveness. Put those things down. Why are you worried about tomorrow? That's what we got out of this first story we heard today, a story about a man looking for a wife, and he said, God, the one who offers water and offers to water my camels, that's the one that I'll know you've picked for me. And I'll wait by this well until the right woman comes along and offers those things. So Isaac's servant knew the secret to carrying and bearing the burden with Christ, and that is to ask. What am I supposed to do today, God? Where am I supposed to go? How am I supposed to spend my time? How am I supposed to spend my money? What choice am I supposed to make here? Do you get the theme? It's not about me. It's not about you. It's not about me deciding things. Jesus says, put my yoke on you. And if you let me direct, if you let me decide, if you let me orient you, if you let go of all that other stuff, and you only trust me, you're yoked to me, I will lead you in the right direction. I will take you in the right direction. It doesn't matter how difficult the furrow is we have to go through. It doesn't matter how long or how hot the day is. If you're with me, I will carry the way. I will be with you. I will sustain you. So come to me, all you who are tired and carrying heavy burdens. They're not yours to carry. Put them down. Let my healing wash over you. Let me transform you. Put your neck in that yoke and walk with me. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light.